Well, now to politics and a bumpy week for the Biden campaign. Joe Biden accused of plagiarizing portions of his climate plan, then taking heat for his four-decade position in favor of the Hyde Amendment, then announcing he no longer supports it. Campaign senior advisor Symone Sanders yesterday taking issue with the idea that he reversed his position. Here's how she describes it.
Folks keep calling this reversal from the vice president. I want to be really clear. I was with him all day yesterday. How he arrived at his position on the Hyde Amendment is not a reversal. This was a thoughtful conversation about access and about health care. I want to be just very clear for folks around the country that the vice president is not someone that will just go with the wind of my friends on the left.
Joining me now is Democratic strategist Antoine C. Wright, former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton's campaign in South Carolina, and conservative radio talk show host Chandelle, also an attorney. And thank you both for joining me this morning. Antoine, I want to start with you because by playing what Biden said about his new position on the Hyde Amendment, let's listen.
I can't justify leaving millions of women without access to the care they need and the ability to exercise their constitutionally protected right. If I believe health care is a right, as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code.
Antoine, what do you make of Biden's campaign pushing back on the idea of the shift on the Hyde Amendment, that it was a reversal?
So a couple of things I personally make up, and this is just Antoine's position. Number one, I think sometimes the music is so loud till we don't actually hear the lyrics. When this all started earlier this week, the Biden campaign said something very clear in their statement. They said to this point, which means that he has the opportunity to evolve. And the one thing about the presidential primary process is the marketplace of ideas, but it gives a candidate a chance to evolve on every issue. We've seen it on the GOP side, and now we're seeing on the Republican side. The other thing consistently I think the vice president has said is while he was a U.S. senator, if you know anything about the Congress, there have been several members who have voted for large package deals that would have included voting for the Hyde Amendment. But the good news is when you look at who makes up the Democratic primary and who is the strongest voice, African-American women, and when you think about who this impacts the most, it's African-American women. I am thankful that he has evolved to this current position. And guess what? For the Joe Biden critics, there will be other positions that he and other candidates will evolve on that perhaps their position in the past may be a little different. That's okay. That's what this primary is all about. Hearing from the American people, hearing from the voters, and coming to a position that actually makes sense so we can be a very inclusive party.
A point well taken there. Chandelle, and in that clip that we just played by Symone Sanders, she denied Biden was trying to mollify progressives. But how will the moderates perceive this?
I think that the problem is the indecisiveness with which the Biden campaign is progressing. And the other problem is the fact that he had sort of captured the conservative Democratic voice, and he distinguished himself from the other candidates by coming up with positions that were more conservative. The Hyde Amendment's been around since 1976. It's been challenged in court. The Supreme Court upheld the Hyde Amendment in 1980 in the decision of Harris versus McRae. So it's well-settled law, and it's something that many senators and representatives have voted on in the past. Joe Biden has consistently voted for it. So to change his position from Wednesday, when he supported the Hyde Amendment, to Thursday, when he is supporting repeal of the Hyde Amendment, looks very insincere. But like I said, now he's no longer distinguishing himself from the rest of the pack. He's thrown himself in with all the other positions that all the other candidates have, which I think is really going to be the fatal flaw here.
And Antoine, but is Biden at risk?
Chandelle, let me say this. Remember, Biden has always been a pro-choice candidate. He has always been consistently in supportive role. So when you say change position, I don't think so. He's consistently said, look, he is for a woman's right to choose. And guess what? Joe Biden is smart, just like me. I'm not in the business of telling my mother, my grandmother, or my sister what they should do with their bodies. And I think that's okay. Believe it or not, there are more people who think like me than think like you on this issue. Your question is Biden in trouble? Absolutely not. the one thing I think the strength Joe Biden has, and I think other candidates enjoy this too, is the ability to take a licking and keep on ticking. And his ability to go through these type cuts and bumps and bruises in a primary and survive and still maintain his front-runner status, and for other candidates too, will ultimately be their ability to do the same thing in the general election. Look, I think the people who are for Joe Biden will still be for Joe Biden. The people who will always be against Joe Biden in the primary, I think they will always be against Joe Biden in the primary, and issues like this really are not a big separation factor because there's a lot of ball left to be played in this game.
So, Antoine, you don't think this is going to cost him at all?
Well, every bump and bruise will cost you something, but you have to think about what happens long term. And again, I think if Biden continues to do what he's supposed to do, meaning lay out the issues and respond to the voters as he makes his rounds around the country, I think that, yes, it will trip him up, but I don't think it will make him fall flat on his political face.
And Chandelle, the latest poll of the Democratic field has Biden at 27%, and he's followed by Bernie Sanders at 15% and Elizabeth Warren at 12%. Do President Trump's supporters still see Biden as his biggest threat?
I'm not sure who they see as their biggest threat. I'm not sure that Joe Biden is distinguishing himself from any of the other candidates at this point. And the problem with his reversal on this issue is the fact that the support or the reasoning for why he switched his position is very questionable. It's almost like his position that he took after there were clips of him touching women in ways that some people claimed were inappropriate. He said, oh, he had evolved on this issue, and now he understands the boundaries that he needs to use when dealing with women. He's doing the same thing here. He's coming up with some justification that doesn't really make sense.
That's not justification.
It's in relation. He said it's because of the fact that Alabama and Georgia and all of these states have passed very restrictive abortion measures. And that's not really anything that's changed.
Let me remind you of something. The country mood changes and people evolve. It wasn't too long ago in which your party had no notion or did not want to embrace the idea of being supportive of the LGBT community. Now, because the mood of the country has changed, because people have evolved on issues, we now see a different position that politicians on both sides of the aisle have embraced the idea of celebrating and embracing the LGBT community. That's no different than every other issue. And for you to say that a candidate cannot evolve, I think that's crazy as hell because issues will change and the mood of people will change.
But Antoine, I want to ask you, because Biden's long record in office, this could open him up to other criticisms, and we've seen a glimpse of that because of his vote on the 1994 crime bill. So that's another issue. Should his campaign have seen that one coming?
Well, I think that first of all, politics is a contact sport, and so you just have to assume there's going to be contact along the way. I think, again, as I said on this Saturday morning program before, Biden will have to answer, like other candidates, for the positions, people they've stood with, and issues they've taken in the past, and that's okay because you have to assume all of this is going to come out. But I think his ability to make adjustments and remain flexible throughout this process, and not just him, but every other candidate who served or who has taken a position before, will determine their short or long-term success. We've seen this on both sides. I'm not sure why there's so much noise this time around about this issue or these specific issues when we've seen this on both sides of the aisle in both primaries.
Definitely some passionate topics here. Thank you, Antoine Seawright and Chandelle Summer. Great to have you here this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.